I think I know most of you in the room, almost. I'm Jemima, and this is Catherine, and together we are the North Wessex Downs FIPL team. We've both been working together, Catherine since the very start of the FIPL programme, and me for the last year. Just quickly before I start, can I have a quick show of hands of how many farmers we've got in the room? Great. And then you can leave your hand up if you have received a FIPL grant, or put it back up. Okay. So most of you know about the 4 themes of FIPL, which are people, place, nature and climate. You've also got to deliver for the North Wessex Downs objectives and fit in with that. As you can see from the graph that we put together, this is actually from the first 3 years, so might have changed a bit this year, a little bit. Place has come out most highly for the out of the 4 themes, quickly followed by nature, which I think is quite a sort of reassuring feel of how farming and the farming things that people are looking for funding have gone towards. I'm not going to spend too long on this because most of you know the FIPL process, mainly because at least half of you have gone through this. But one thing that has made FIPL very special, I think, is that it's got a very different process to your standard application. When you first apply, you speak to Catherine or I, will come and visit you. And as so often was the case with Rob or myself visiting, we'd go and have a look to see if you wanted a dew pond restored and come away with a snowball of projects, including education and creating a new hedge. Then the application process. I love working with farmers, mainly because they fill in half the application and send it to you, and then you have to help them with the other half. But again, that's what's made FIPL unique, is that we have been allowed to assist farmers in applying for everything. The application is then scored. And then finally, if it's under £10,000, we use one of our specialists. So we have the panel of 12, each one of them specialising in one or more things, but mainly farmers and local farmers. So they are all within the North Wessex Downs. If it's under £10,000, they will have a look at it and they will agree. They'll often ask me questions to go back to the farmers to find out more information. Or other times they'll just say, that's fantastic, let's go with it. For anything over £10,000, we have a local panel, or the panel. The meetings are generally every 6 weeks, and we have our expert, Richard Clark, who chairs it. All of the panel, again, what's special about them is that they will answer the phone. If Catherine or I have a problem or a query or we need to know some specialist information, they will be on hand to help us and guide us. And I think that's an ongoing theme throughout FIPL as well. And then, crucially, when the grant is claimed, Catherine, who is really the kind of backbone behind FIPL, will collect all the information and give you some money. So without further ado, I'm going to pass on to Catherine, who's going to run through some of the figures that she's collected and turned into beautiful graphs for you to see.
Thank you. Hi. Yes, I'm Catherine, and it's lovely to see so many faces and people that I've worked with over the last 3 years. I've been with the programme since 2021, working with grant holders, applicants, with Wiltshire Council, who help process our payments, and DEFRA, of course, who provide the money. I've just got a few figures to introduce, and then Jemima will talk a little bit more about some specific projects that are worth highlighting. So this table just shows that since the beginning, we've funded 166 projects, ranging from less than £2,000 to over £200,000. In fact, our largest one recently was over £250,000, and Jemima's going to talk about that a bit later. All of them deliver for one or more of the 4 themes that Jemima mentioned. And as she said, they're hugely varied, from ponds and hedges, farm machinery to allow more nature-friendly farming, which Julian would approve of, carbon audits, biodiversity audits, supporting farm groups, educational activity, wetland creation, improving access, community groups, food diversification. It's been a huge pleasure to see such a range of projects improving our beautiful landscape. I've also mentioned the One Historic Buildings grant that we awarded last year. DEFRA provided some funds to restore historic buildings in the landscape. We were able to help a barn near Chelsea with that money. Just a couple of charts here to illustrate the geographical and the financial range of the projects. The first chart shows the number by the size of the grant. And as you can see, over half of them are actually less than 10,000. So these are the ones that can get processed faster. And they provide funds rapidly when they're needed. A very useful process. The second chart shows the projects by county. And we've been pleased to see that they're very nicely spread across the area. And Wiltshire and Berkshire obviously are our two largest counties in North Wessex Downs, and so it's good to see that they make up, the project numbers reflect these numbers. The small section there across North Wessex Downs, those are educational projects that have been open to anyone from the area. And that includes the Pasture for Life programme, which Jimmy Woodrow will talk about later this morning. And also we've run a series of courses on how for farmers to attend to learn how to host schools, run school visits on their farms, and that was run by LEAF, Linking Education and Farming, which has been a nice collaboration. I've also got some figures that DEFRA produced this year, covering the first 3 years of FIPL, and we've added our own figures for comparison. So as you can see, the FIPL programme is having a real impact on the countryside and nature and people's access to the countryside. I think it's nice to see that North Wessex Downs is contributing its fair share to these statistics. 27 projects reducing flood risk, 4 miles of new hedges, 4 paths, some of them at sheep drove here, 23 ponds, I think it might be more now, and 6 projects helping threatened species. The numbers in green are North Wessex Downs figures. We've supported or engaged with over 230 farmers. That includes applications, expressions of interests, and also farmers who are members of farmers groups that we support. And we've managed to support over nearly 50,000 hectares of land for things like surveys, habitat improvement, and farming changes. Many of these farmers had never actually interacted with us as an organisation before, so that's been a real benefit of the programme. Finally, I've just got one slide on a particular area that I've been working with, which has been very satisfying, educational grants. And as with all FIPL grants, these have been hugely varied in size and nature, ranging from classroom builds, toilets and hand washing facilities, which are essential to allow longer visits, resources to support outside learning, and we've actually funded 4 trailers now in the area on farms to allow visits for children and other visitors around the farm. And as I said, we also funded the training courses, which have been well attended by FIPL-funded farmers. I just wanted quickly to mention, we were thrilled recently to hear that one of our FIPL-funded farmers, Lucy Tyler, recently received a Farmers Weekly Award for, among other things, her educational work. So we're very proud of that. So now back, thank you, and back to Jemima.
Thank you. So I'm going to fly through this quickly. Before I joined the FIPL team and came into the North Wessex Downs, Rob West, who was my predecessor, had built up a sort of slight legacy for himself of creating these ponds across the North Wessex Downs, particularly in the dry areas of the landscape. I am not an ecologist, never have been. I don't even really like ponds. However, they are growing on me. In particular, the pond on the top left here is just off a footpath, right up at Coombe on the top of the hill. It was a historic dew pond. They've repuddled the clay. They've laid the trees so that walkers can sit down and enjoy them, a habitat bank at the back, and then they've cut in slips into the standing deadwood for the local bat population. So I am beginning to see the benefits. Farmer group work. Since FIPL started, there have been 3 new farmer-led groups created, and in fact there is a kick-off meeting for one on the 13th down at the Clears. So if you're not part of a group and you'd like to be, get in touch with us and we will put you in touch with one of the facilitators. 29 group projects delivered. FIPL wouldn't have worked without the group facilitators. They have come up with the most amazing ideas and come and spoken to us. And we've, well, managed to fund 29 of them. Not all of them, but 29 of them. The facilitators are now also working together and working with us at the North Wessex Downs to come up with bigger, larger, more connecting projects to help farmers move forward. There is a quick map of the groups, but Gemma's going to cover that in a minute. Specific species supported by FIPL. I think we've done quite well, given that I'm not an ecologist. I'll talk about a couple, but one to note, again, this was Rob's, was the first beaver cubs have just been born in Hampshire, thanks to a FIPL grant that helped them be released. Dormice in the North Wessex Downs. So this was a large project that we did across 2 farmer groups in conjunction with FWAG. They monitored 60 sites across the 2 farmer groups. They provided volunteer training, hedgerow surveys, and crucially one-to-one farming that the Facilitation Fund currently doesn't allow for. Hedges are now in better condition, and hopefully we will build on that work, connecting them and bringing them back into a more favourable way in order for them to connect. Unfortunately, as is the way with some of these projects, we found dormice in one group, but not the other. However, what that base point starts for us is that we can now work on how we can move those across the landscape. The large blue. This was actually an under £10,000 project, and I feel quite pleased that we were managed to be included in this, and we've called it a partnership. The large blue was actually declared extinct at one time. It was then slowly introduced and found again in Somerset. We had a small FIPL grant that allowed them to be hatched and now reintroduced, hopefully successfully, back down into the Pewsey area. I think we're still not allowed to say exactly where, but there are also other farmers here today, in fact, that are looking at ways that they can improve and create habitat for these butterflies to flourish across the landscape. Deer management. Deer management is something that was spoken about by nearly every farmer that I spoke to. I've planted a new hedge, but the deer are eating it. I've got this lovely crop, but the deer are eating it. So we came at this at a kind of multi-pronged way. One was to improve the markets, one was to improve public awareness, and the other one was to carry on with education. Anyway, so Charlie here at Sheepdrove has come up with a revolutionary game changer program where he is educating people on how to make the most with venison charcuterie. I don't know if you know, but a catering student that does a 2-year catering course is given 1 fish to butcher in the entire time that they do their butchery course. So Charlie is running this course, not for profit, for free, for these students to turn venison, which is one of our biggest farming problems, into a really meaningful project. We've also given support to the game dealers. Recently, we did a talk at Bedwin where we had 50 people attend. Our latest FIPL deer management course for stalkers and farmers has already sold out. And lastly, our biggest grant to date, the micro tannery. We funded Katie and James Allen to produce an education hub and tanning centre. Again, tanning courses in the UK have now ceased to exist. There is no university or college that is providing tanning courses. But we now have one in the North Wessex Downs, and they are aiming to help people set up their own micro tanneries across the country. One of the big things about this application was that we had 16 other farmers write in to support it, to say that we need this. We need to stop sending our hides abroad. We need to keep this craft alive. Katie herself was due to be here today, but had to duck out because she's actually exhibiting her naturally dyed, homemade jumpers at Bristol Cathedral today. And FIPL wouldn't be FIPL without everybody that's involved. Our team at the North Wessex Downs are crucial. Becky, who sits just across from me in the office, is constantly badgered about whether this is a planning-related issue or not. Anne, who deals with communications, and the rest of the team all pitch in at various moments. The DEFRA FIPL team mainly help, but are always on standby for any questions. we've worked with hundreds of organisations, and I think that's the other thing that FIPL has managed to help us do, is build this collaboration across the countryside. Volunteer groups for these projects as well. The volunteers have been incredible, and again, some of these projects wouldn't be delivered without the volunteers. The farmer group facilitators, I know there's a good lot of you here. Thank you, because FIPL really wouldn't have achieved the landscape scale changes that we've done so far. And then, of course, the North Wessex Downs farmers. Without you, we wouldn't be doing any of this. So thank you again.